Howdy! Welcome to Sammy Legend's James Bond Show. I am Sammy Legend, and I would just like to preface this video with a thank you for watching my channel, and this video in particular. I have spent a lot more time on this video than any of my others, editing and compiling a lot of funny clips and cuts and stuff just to make the quality a lot better for you guys. If you like what you see, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And please, more than any other video so far, stay till the end of this one. There is a lot of funny stuff in this one, including some self-deprecation stuff, which was not planned, but I think it turned out pretty funny and pretty well anyway. Whether you're new here or you've been watching since the beginning, I thank you, and let's get it rolling.
Bond. James Bond.
Good morning. My name's Bond. James Bond.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James Bond.
That's quite horrific. That's brilliant. Brilliant. Howdy, and welcome to episode 8 of Sammy Legend's James Bond Show. I am Sammy Legend, and today I will be going over my book review of Devil May Care by Sebastian Faulks, writing as Ian Fleming. I finished this book around Christmas time. I'll give you a quick story on how I got this book. This is actually one that is from, you can see 18.99 pounds there. I actually got this from, and most of my James Bond books, from thriftbooks.com. You can get a lot of used books there for very cheap. If anyone's looking to complete their James Bond collection, like the John Gardners and the Raymond Bensons, because those are pretty difficult to find. They don't even sell them in, at least like at Barnes & Noble and things like that. You can go to thriftbooks.com and you can get hardcover, softcover, and they're no more than like maybe $5 per book. Then that's where I got this. And then when I got it, because they have different hubs around the country, and I just so happened to get one that was actually from England when it was originally published. So I'm not going to be giving a story breakdown, beat by beat, because you can just go to Wikipedia and get that. Anyone can get the storyline on the internet. This isn't going to be that video. This is going to be my opinion on things in this book. So I guess I'll just go ahead and get started. Sebastian Faulks writing as Ian Fleming is what it says right there on the cover. Not so much. Fleming had a unique style that I don't think anyone can imitate. He is the undisputed god of Bond, and
History isn't kind to those who play God.
I don't think that it doesn't sound like him. Sebastian Faulks, it's different. You can tell it's not. I don't know why they put that little subtitle in there, that little blurb, but I don't know. It's not. He doesn't have a bad writing style, but it's definitely not Fleming. Like I said, that's very inimitable. It's hard to describe too, to put Fleming's writing style into words. This was published on May 28th, 2008. It was Ian Fleming's 100th birthday.
Happy birthday, Papa.
So the setting of this book is in Iran, the Middle East. And it's nice to be in a location that literary Bond hadn't been to, seeing as this takes place after The Man with the Golden Gun and ignores all other continuation novels up to that point. So I haven't yet read any of the John Gardner or Raymond Benson books, so I can't say definitively that this is the first time ever that Bond had been to the Middle East. But in this literary Bond storyline, of which there are many different paths that you could follow,
Timeline skewed into this tangent.
This is the first time that he has been there. That being said, It's not a glamorous location that we tend to see Bond travel to, and in that regard, it's not even really that fun to read, to be honest, in terms of the location descriptions. At the very least, it's a new location that he has never been to in the literary books. So that's nice. It's something unique about this novel. The story, I have a few little things I will talk about. The tennis match between Bond and the bad guy, Julius Gorner. It's nice to see, again, like up to that point in time, we haven't seen Bond play tennis.
What have you learned so far?
Well, my backhand's improved.
I did pick up on the subtleties in the writing about the net. I just had an inkling that Julius Gorner, he had the net rigged in his favor. He's similar to Hugo Drax and Goldfinger in that regard. He's a rich entrepreneur and a company owner, but he's also a cheat.
He's an asshole.
I don't know if anyone else that has ever read this, if they picked up on that easily. I don't think it was very well hidden. It was quite out in the open, that the way it's written, that it seems somehow suspicious, and it's an easy thing to pick up on, I guess. It's not. I mean, we know going in that he's the bad guy. I mean, just in the blurb in the opening of the book, but still. And then I also get Live and Let Die and License to Kill vibes with the distribution of drugs as the villain's main scheme. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just something that I picked up on. Perhaps it was a throwback to the Bond villains of old. It's just very similar to those two movies. And then, Gorner, he's our Bond villain here. So, of course, he has to have a physical deformity. And we have that here in the form of a misshapen left hand, which resembles a monkey paw with lots of hair going like halfway up the forearm, and he doesn't have a opposable thumb.
I better use my strong hand.
And he always wears a white glove to cover it, which is a symbol of his insecurity. The Bond girl, at this point in the story, at the tennis match, we are introduced to Scarlett Popova, who actually stood out to me in multiple scenes, and I thought she was pretty memorable. She has a twin sister, Poppy.
Poppies will put them to sleep.
Multiple times in the story, I noticed Faulks mentions things that are either Scarlet in color, and there's a few times where he mentions Poppy in a different aspect than the character of Poppy. It's very obvious that Poppy is not a real character. I picked that up about halfway through the book. I started to get the feeling that Poppy wasn't real because, up to that point they had mentioned her a lot, but they hadn't shown her. There was one meeting in the park where Bond meets Poppy, and she's trying to prove to him that she is.
Use your words.
What an idiot!
The twin sister Poppy. So she shows him the birthmark, and he happens to look in her eyes, but he hadn't noticed Scarlett's eyes. So I was kind of putting two and two together, and in my head I was like, well, we haven't seen her up till this point, even though she's been mentioned a lot as the twin sister, and Faulks just so happens to mention her eyes, but not Scarlett's eyes. I was like, that's got to be contacts. And then, it's revealed to Bond later that was true, and they were contacts, and that she wasn't a twin after all. Again, to me, that was something pretty easy to pick up on. I'm not sure about anyone else. For other characters, for M, I felt it to be a relatively by-the-book interaction here, and nothing in particular really stood out to me. That being said, almost all Bond M interaction scenes are a blast. Pretty much every book. It's definitely something to look forward to, kind of in as well as in the movies, and the Q scene as well. Everyone looks forward to that. Same here. Chagrin, the henchman. Honestly, not too much stood out to me with him as a henchman. I guess he was supposed to be along the lines of Oddjob and Jaws, but he just wasn't that memorable to me. He just didn't stand out. He didn't seem like a very strong opposing force to Bond, to me anyway, in my opinion. Mathis, it's nice to see him back here and that he had a little more to do, and it's cool that Mathis was basically in the opening and the pre-title sequence of this novel in Paris. Felix! We got Felix back as well. The most memorable scene to me with him was the action scene towards the end of the book when they're having the shootout at the phone booth and they're trying to get a call out. I thought that was quite a good scene. It's nice to see Felix have an action scene of his own. And all the other characters are forgettable, to me at least. Maybe that could be because it took me just over a month to read this book, but I barely remember anything at all. With Moneypenny, with Darius, Elizada, Loelia Ponsonby, or Bill Tanner, it's almost like they weren't even in the book. You know, they didn't have hardly anything to do. But yeah, so that's unfortunate because I like a lot of the interactions he has. You know, like Bill Tanner is his best friend at MI6, and there really wasn't a whole lot with him. Same with Moneypenny. I wish there was a little bit more interaction with those characters, similar to how he interacts with M. To wrap up the novel, I feel that Faulks did it way too quickly. I'm not a fan of that. Fleming did the same thing. Fleming and Faulks here, they seem to wrap up the novels in like maybe 20 pages or less, heavier on the or less side. This book almost felt like it had two endings to me. You know, it's or at least a faux ending. The plane fight and in consequence, the crash felt like a pretty good action-oriented ending, and then the real ending shows up, and it's rather boring. And Chagrin and Gorner just miraculously show up because they took the contrived train to Paris, and the way Gorner is unalived is boring. He just commits suicide. So, you know, he doesn't give that gratification to Bond. It's boring. You know, I don't know about you, but I like to see Bond have a good confrontation with the villain, and to have the villain die by the means of their own invention or scheme, aka Elliot Carver in Tomorrow Never Dies with the Seadrill. That's brilliant. Brilliant.
Give the people what they want!
Also, an insanely great Bond movie. I love Tomorrow Never Dies. I felt like it was a rather uninspired ending. I want to see Bond have a good confrontation with the bad guy. And here, you know, like I said, they took the contrived train. They're contrived back into the novel. You know, Chagrin shows up out of nowhere on the train, and then Bond kills him. And this was before Spectre, but it seems to me like that was very similar to the train scene in Spectre where he gets rid of Hinks. And then, Gorner shows up again, randomly, just contrived, on the boat tour in Paris that Bond is on. And, you know, he explains it as, you know, he was following him, and he expected that he would be there. It's way too contrived for me. I don't like it, and there's tension in the scene, don't get me wrong, where he's got, I think it was a pistol to Bond's spine from another Gorner henchman behind him, and Gorner's to his side, and they're talking it up, and Gorner's in disguise.
That's putting it mildly, 007.
And, you know, you can kind of feel maybe that Bond is in danger, but that's really all the scene offers, is a little bit of tension. There's no confrontation, you know. There's one little action scene, if you want to call it that, where, you know, he like dispatches of that henchman, and Gorner kind of escapes the boat and goes onto the bridge, and Bond shoots at him. You know, he hits him, and then he chases him a little more, and then Gorner's on the edge of the bridge. He's like, I'm not letting you have this gratification.
Wink, finger gun.
I'm just going to go and jump off here and kill myself, and he gets caught up in the propeller of the boat that they were on. After all the crap that Bond had gone through in this book, that is very, very uninspiring. It's such a pathetic way for the villain to go, to me. And he did go through a lot in this novel. You know, he probably more than any other, at least in terms of like blood and gore. Like the one scene where he's got to drive the Jeep across the desert and it gets blown up and the glass shards blow at his face, and like the very next description is how a glass shard went through his cheek and lodged itself in his gum.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
That's quite horrific, and like it's hardly even brought up again in the novel, like how much that is gonna affect him. And you know, what about an infection? What about talking? You know, it's kind of very, you know, he makes a big deal about it. You know, after the explosion, you know, they get impaled through the cheek into the gum, and then it's kind of like dulled down, and it's just in the background the rest of the novel, and you don't really hear much about it at all after that. It's nitpicks. It's still a good read, and all in all, out of 5 stars, I think I would give it a solid 3 or a weak 3.5. I don't think it's better than that. It's not one of the best novels, but it still is a good read, and if you are a completionist, I highly recommend it. You got to read them all. It's like Pokemon. You got to catch them all. You gotta read them all to get the full effect.
Leave me, Mr. Bond. I could shoot you from Stuttgart and still create the proper effect.
Yeah, so a solid 3 out of 5 or a weak 3.5. That's where I'm gonna go with this one. That's it. I gave you my opinions. I tried to stay away from storyline aspects too much because, again, you can just find that anywhere online. I try to give my own unique review of this, and there will be more book reviews coming as I read more James Bond books.
That's called foreshadowing.
They will be out of order because I have already read all the Flemings, and I am not going to go back to those for a little while. I'm almost into the John Gardners, so once I start reading those, I will be doing book reviews on those, and I will put them up on the channel for you. That's it. This was episode 8 of Sammy Legends James Bond Show, and I'll see y'all next time. Shaken, not stirred.
I'm back.
Camera!
Also, side note, why is the novel called Devil May Care? I was wondering that the whole time I was reading it. Other than maybe a quick mention, I believe there was one point where Bond says, something about Gorner and the devil, or maybe that was just in the opening blurb on the opening flap of the book. But what does Devil May Care have anything to do with any of the events that happen in this novel? That's what I would like to know. I felt it was a title that has nothing to do with anything, and it's like Goldfinger. Obviously, that's about a man named Goldfinger. It's Spy Who Loved Me. He's a spy, and it's a story about the girl who has a spy who loves her. They're very, I don't get it with this book. But anyway, that's it. Just a quick little last minute rant there. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.